Pearson is the author of more books than I can easily recount. He's a New York Times bestselling author of detective fiction, espionage fiction, and dear to my heart, a now long-running series of adventure books centered in Disney theme parks and cruise ships. We're now in the third series of Kingdom Keepers books, which is called Inheritance. Book 2 of Inheritance is recently out, and it is called Villain's Realm.
Villain's Realm.
So I'm shocked that the series is continuing to go on and that you seem to be having so much fun with it.
So much fun.
It just keeps getting livelier. And science
and
fiction
it all comes to a stop at the end of February when the third Inheritance comes out, and that's the last Kingdom Keepers book. And when I finished it, I just cried like a baby. I didn't expect to. And I was sitting at my computer, and I just started bawling, saying, this is it. I'm losing all my friends. It was crazy.
Well, it's never fully over until...
It's over.
But as far as you could tell, it's over.
Yeah. I'm actually writing a 6-book series for second, third, and fourth graders. So very small books, highly illustrated. It's kind of Kingdom Keepers not on steroids. It's called Magical Map, and these brother and sister have found a journal in actually a Miami bookstore, an Orlando bookstore, and Miami bookstore, and there's a weird map at the back of it, and the kids realize they sort of decode this thing, and they're able to touch an attraction. The maps that are back there, and the diary that's back there are clearly from before Magic Kingdom was ever built, before any of World was built, and they have to get in there and fix some of the problems with the attractions. So there are all these hijinks, and their mom is the head of maintenance, so they're always helping mom out by getting pirates running again.
Well, one of the things we share in common about the way we look at these parks is, one, not just looking at the stories of the rides when we ride them, but also looking at the whole scene, and we realize we're storytellers. Oh, there are so many stories that are happening backstage all the time.
Yeah.
And that, like, the building of the place is a story behind the story.
Exactly.
And that there are always stories happening.
And just the fact that, there's a 3-act structure to every attraction. There's a beginning, middle, and end to every attraction. I think the reason that we all enjoyed Disney attractions more than some other amusement parks is it isn't just amusement. They are storytelling all the time. And to see that, and then to go on the ride again and you see a little more, and you go on the ride another 3 months later and it's something different, because the stories are, they write 80-page, the Imagineers write these 80-page books explaining what the story is, and it just unfolds piece by piece as we all go on them.
And at one point, when Walt Disney was encouraging his Imagineers to develop these things, one of them said, Walt, no one's going to see all these details. And he says they will the third and the fourth
That's
and the
it.
fifth
And
time
we
they
do.
ride these rides.
He also said that he would love, in fact, they've drawn up plans. You've probably seen them. He said that he would love to see Epcot developed as a community. And so the Inheritance series is an homage to that dream of his, because in the Inheritance series, we're a few years in the future. There's 40,000 people living in and around Epcot, including kids and their families. And the kids in these families are, in my novels, are the sons and daughters of the Kingdom Keepers. And like their parents, they sort of get tapped to help fix things, and they end up all over the world in different Disney parks fixing things. So it's high adventure and all over the world.
From the beginning of the Kingdom Keepers series, there was a science fiction element that was crucial. And even if it didn't feel like it was always foregrounded, it was an essential component. And in some ways, it was your workaround from the danger of telling stories where children might get hurt.
That was exactly what it was, John. And it was... When they asked me to write, I write a lot of crime thrillers, and they asked me if I could write a kind of crime thriller but for kids, and they said, but you have to remember, you're in our parks. There can't be any sabotage. There can't be any weapons. Nothing can blow up. You can't have any kidnapping. And I said, wait a second. You want this to be a thriller? And they said, yes, please. And I think I submitted 3 or even 5 outlines, and they turned them down, and they said, no, this doesn't fit the bill. And I went to a seminar, and the person running the seminar had a little, it was like a salad bowl on his desk, only it had a top on it. And floating above it was a little pink pig. And we took bathroom break, and I went up to his desk and went to pick up the pig, and it wasn't there. These things are that you can buy them on the internet. You don't plug them in. They're daylight imaging, but they're holograms. And the moment I saw that device, I said, wait, that's the answer. If the kids are holograms, Disney attorneys are going to say, oh, it's fine. It's just happening to a hologram. And so off we went, and then they caught on. So who knew?
And then once they were locked in,
yeah,
you got to blow stuff up.
Yeah, yeah, you could do all sorts of stuff. Once it was only going to hurt a hologram. Never blew anything up, but yeah.
So in the new series, you're imagining into the future.
Yes,
that science fiction element that was there as like a more than a trace element, but it made the story possible. It didn't necessarily drive
exactly
the story, but now it seems like you're having a lot of fun with the science fiction elements and just trying to imagine the way the world would work and the way Disney
based
would
on
work.
Current technology, yes, with very little imagination, just sort of extending things that we all know about or that are soon going to be on the market. And the fun thing for me was taking a home gaming system and making it something that's 4D, so it's very believable holograms. You can smell things, you can see things. And at this kid's birthday, something goes wonky, and he suddenly finds himself in a bit of a duel with Jafar, and he doesn't know how any of this is real, but it feels very real. And it's established in the Kingdom Keepers that Finn Whitman had a close contact, especially with Mickey. And so he has Mickey's wand on his above his fireplace, and the child grabs that to fight with, really. But when he waves it, he cuts basically a portal, and all the books are based on the ability of that wand to cut a portal into other worlds, and those other worlds, of course, are always Disney. So they end up in different Disney worlds as they do this. They end up in France, they end up in Shanghai, and all over the world. So it's really fun.
Yeah, that's really trippy.
It is. That's a good word.
Areas of Walt Disney World, and then you open a portal, and it's like, okay, but no, we're going to end up actually not in the simulated place,
but Disney Paris.
You're going to move into the real place.
Right.
And you end up jumping into alternate
So I had
Disney
so much fun going to those parks, including in the first Inheritance book, there's sort of an imaginary Disney park, and outside of Beijing in China, as you're driving along the highway, if you look to your right, there's a failed knockoff Disney park with cracks, with trees growing out of the cracks, and the buildings are all decaying. And I went, that's my world. So I was able to throw that into Morocco for the first book, and just had a blast with it. It was somehow freeing, I think, to get away from the holograms and to just be a kid again in a really hijinks, up stakes adventure, and running all around trying to get things solved. I mean, at one point the little kid gets kind of jailed, and he's in jail, and is it a fake jail? Is it the jail from Pirates of the Caribbean? He's not sure, but the door doesn't open, and he makes friends with a rat, and on and on we go.
And the story gets, the world you're imagining, it's very complicated. And yet,
I get criticized for that, John.
Do you?
I do, especially my crime stuff. They always say, "Can't you make it a little simpler?" And apparently, I can't. So,
well, my point here, Ridley, is that as you are telling a very complicated story, these are for younger readers.
They are, but when you deal with Disney,
you don't.
Go ahead.
Condescend to your audience.
No.
You're not writing down to kids saying, "Okay, here's what I think you could under." It's like, no. The world keeps getting more complicated, and these children ask the questions the reader might ask, which, what's going on?
Yeah, exactly.
Where am I?
Let me explain this a little.
And you get to parcel the information out. Like, well, we are in an emergency. We need to go do this. So here's
Step
some
one.
information.
Yeah.
But we can't stop.
You're
we
a keen
have to
reader
go
is what
here.
you are, John. I'm not sure everybody picks up on that, but it is true.
Well, I remember from 2007 to 2010, I was at NYU in their MFA program learning how to be a writer of literature.
Oh, yeah.
And I had, the first of the Kingdom Keepers books, and then I saw it in a Barnes and Noble, and I'm like, let me just pick that up again. Like, it's this great. Borges has this great quote where he's like, "Oh, I wanted to buy this great book, but I couldn't buy it because I had it at home." And it just, but he wanted the impulse, and so I picked it up. And here I was learning how to be the best literary writer I could be, and I picked up the first page of that novel, and I'm like, this is perfect. Like, all the things
great.
I'm learning how to do, like I couldn't ask for a stronger example
that
of
is so kind
mastery
of
of storytelling, and it's so vivid.
Oh, it's very kind of you.
And so, I mean,
one thing we learned, Dave and I, Dave Barry and I, is that adults with my crime novels, his novels, adults read it once and pass it to a friend. When you write for kids, they read it often 2 or 3 times. And I'll tell a story after this, if you do a good job. But the trouble with that is, of course, it has to be spot on.
Yeah.
Because if they read it a second time and they start to see the cracks in it, so they're actually much more difficult to write. And you never write down to them. They're smarter than us. Anybody who's a parent knows that. They're smarter at age 2 than you are. So, you can't write down to them. Sometimes you might pull the vocabulary back a hair. But you have to keep the story energized, or the third time they're going to say, wait, this is, you can't get there. I had a young man who arrived to one of my signings with his mom, and his mom was there as an accreditor because he had read all of the Kingdom Keepers 19 times. 19 times. And I called for security because that means you're totally insane. But that's the kind of uber reader you get when you write for younger readers. And you just can't get it wrong because they're going to kill you if you get it wrong. Even though it's Disney, they'll still kill you.
Or maybe because it's Disney.
Yeah, maybe because it's Disney. Good point.
Disney invites fanaticism.
Mm-hmm.
And when you enter that world and... I will forever be jealous of you, Ridley, because
you're kind.
You have had the blessing of Disney
I've
approving.
Been so
and
lucky about
we've
that.
spoken about this before. Yeah. The vetting process was not brief.
No, and still ongoing. Yeah.
But
still ongoing.
Right, you've been allowed to play officially with the toys in ways that are delightful and shocking when you see.
It's alarming. Yeah.
Timidly, sometimes Disney can treat its intellectual properties.
And they're actually a little more timid now than they were 20, 25 years ago when I started. And they sort of gave me a free hand to deal with it. But they've been incredibly generous. Because my writing process is observing and writing and editing. And the observing, the research, the going to places and making sure I get the streets right and the stop signs right. And all that's very important to me. And I explained this to them when they wanted this. And I said, so the concept we're coming up with means I need to be in the parks after dark because that's when these kids are going to be there. And they said, not possible. We just don't do that, especially for a novelist. But they eventually did let me.
Ticket.
Yeah. And now it's been 31 visits. Whether it's on their ships or in their parks. And that kind of research of being kind of scared and it's cold, it really helps.
If you ever need a chaperone for a 3 a.m.
Let's
visit
do it.
Anywhere, give me a call. Do you have materials that have dossiers on these characters? Because at this point, through the 3 novel cycles plus the syndrome,
right. Right. Yes, 13 books.
This is now, an intergenerational affair with...
Yeah, it's complicated.
A lot of characters. Yeah, the world just
We go
kept
back to
building
1957. We go forward. I had a book signing in California in the Palo Alto area. And there was a young woman, very well put together, maybe 16, 17, sitting in the front row. And she had a stack of my books. And every book had at least 15 Post-its sticking out of it. And I was giving my talk, and I just kept looking down at her books. I'm going,
security.
I'm afraid I know what those Post-its are. So I went over to her afterwards, and I said, are those Post-its what I think they are? And she said, inconsistencies? And I said, yes. And she said, yes. So I hired her. And for about 5 or 6 years, Brooke Mushat from the West Coast, all the way up through her college years, worked just hand in hand with me to keep me on track and not get, as I do, get, sort of spontaneous with my creativity and forgetting what came before. So she built Bibles. She doesn't work for me any longer, but I still use her Bible. She built these really strong Bibles of every book and the entire series and the arc of the series, the arc of each book, the arc of each character, and I reference it all that. Well, I mean, I'm on to different things now, but during the Kingdom Keepers years, I referenced it daily because I didn't want to make some big mistake that would have somebody else putting a Post-it in the book,
That's a lot of Post-its.
It's a lot of Post-its.
So, how did the inheritance start? All right,
No, I can tell you, because it started out of I had written 7 Kingdom Keepers books, and they did very, very well, and Disney was nice enough to come back and say, "Do you have any other ideas?" And I had, through my research, I do a lot of the research with Becky and Kevin at the archives out west, and they had included me in on some of the craziness of opening day in Disneyland. And many people know all these things, but it really, if everything that could have gone wrong went wrong, and they still pulled it off. And that stuck with me. So when Disney asked, could I do something else, I thought, I don't really, the only thing I can think to do is maybe go back to the opening day and have the Kingdom Keepers get back to opening day and help keep all that stuff on track. Because maybe it was the work of the Overtakers, because everything went wrong. And they said, great. So I wrote the Return series, which is really that the Kingdom Keepers return to the start of everything. And then that completed, and that had been a success. And they said, do you have anything else? And I said, I don't want to repeat myself. And that's when I thought about Walt Disney's dream to have this town around Epcot. And I thought, I am in this great position to realize that and actually create that world he thought was going to be there. How cool and how powerful and how fun is that? And they let me do it. So I just envisioned a thing that Walt Disney had seen 50 years ago and put it to life and brought it to life and just had so much fun with it. And I didn't want to walk on the same characters. I dealt with a lot of characters in the Kingdom Keepers series. So I was looking for really ancillary characters, and I came across the fairy godmother. And so in the inheritance books, I really take advantage of the fairy godmother. She becomes this sort of quirky, fidgety, forgetful, brilliant mentor to the kids to get them through their problems. And Disney let me take over Ursula, and I have sort of Ursula as the biggest villain in the whole thing, and she gets really nasty as these 3 books go along. The final draw comes out at the end of February, and Ursula is front and center in that one.
Well, I'll have to catch up by that point. What's great is you've got these now, grown Kingdom Keepers who are in the picture enough for your long, range readers to appreciate and go, okay, what happened to them?
Yes.
All right, how did things turn out? And we get enough of them in the book for that to feel satisfying. And also, when things go wrong, they are so experienced that surprise and shock of, wait, what? Okay, there's none of that from them.
Right.
Though they're kids who they haven't been disclosing.
They've kept all this secret. And they've matured.
Have to go through this.
So now they see this stuff as actually dangerous. They can look back at their own lives and go, we should never have tried half of those things. And they know their kids are about to try half those things. And it's like, honey, why don't you just stay home? Let's not do this right now. So, that was fun for me to play with. What would Finn Whitman be like when he's 40? And, Willa and any of these. And I knew they would be more cautious with their kids, because we all are, than they were as kids. And to try to show that, that dichotomy of, I almost want to go join my kids and do all this over again, versus this really isn't that safe.
We have to play defense.
Yeah, exactly. Well said.
And let's make sure we understand what's happening before we start making decisions about how to act on whatever's happening.
Yes, and a lot's happening.
And the story is so exciting and so fun. You found a way to remind me of what it felt like reading that first book. And,
I'm so
I read
glad.
these books as an adult.
Well,
That at no, and I don't have kids, so it's not like,
Yeah.
oh, I bonded with this.
No. Yeah.
Like, as an adult, childhood is a perfectly acceptable mode of storytelling.
It is.
But I love those books, and the new book series is just it's so much fun, and you found a way to return to the material.
Oh, I'm so glad.
It seems to me like you've paused, right? Like, until you had the right idea.
Yeah. No,
You weren't like, oh, here's more because I can. It's more
but
like,
it would be repeating yourself, and who wants to do that? And even writing 7 Kingdom Keepers was tricky. For the 7th book, I don't know if I've told you about this, but for the 7th book, I didn't want to end the series by me deciding for my incredible readers. I have the most amazing readers. I get 1 million emails. They know the books better than I do. They live with these characters. I now have people who are 30 years old writing me and thanking me for the books during their most troubling years, because they had this group and they realized they had to work as a team and all these things. So we being Disney, hired an independent contractor, a brilliant sort of startup on the West Coast, to help me write the 7th book with my readers. And it was very complicated, and I won't go into it all here, but it ended up that each week I would send out and get returned like a 5 multiple choice outline. And the readers would determine where that was going to go. So by Tuesday night, I said, they picked that, but at least I made them up. And I would have to have it finished and copy edited by Saturday night, because we would post it Sunday and then start another chapter with multiple choice on Monday.
So the readers were doing Choose Your Own Adventure, and then
right,
you were
and
on
I
the
was
hook
writing
for
it. Exactly.
after they chose.
And because I believe in keeping kids reading and writing, we had, for those who wanted to, they could submit a 1-paragraph piece of writing around what the theme was. And so we had, initially I think the first week we had like 1,500 submissions. But it got up to where we were getting 20,000 submissions. It was just insane. So this thing ran for 40 weeks. I stopped, so I didn't show them the end of the book, because I wanted them to buy the book. But we had 34 kids who had their writing in the book, and it just ended up this incredible experience for all of us.
Well, I remember taking my niece to a book signing at Walt Disney World at the store Once Upon a Toy.
Oh, yeah.
And I remember thinking, okay, this store doesn't sell books other than today. And hundreds and hundreds, maybe over 1,000, I don't know. But the line was extraordinary. And there were kids just reading online. Okay. Like,
so fun.
Not my niece. My niece was splashing in the water and getting into trouble.
Exactly. And so this group, the firm on the West Coast, did a survey. They did a lot of research into who bought the Kingdom Keepers and all that, which Disney nor I had ever done. And they discovered that, as you were saying, 50% of the book sales were to adults for their own reading, because Disney adults love to read about the Disney parks. We had no idea of that. 51% were young girls, 49% were young boys of the remaining 50%, but 50% of the books were being bought by adults.
Not just me.
Not just you, John.
Me plus other adults.
Yeah, that's it.
Okay.
Yeah, unless you bought an awful lot of books.
I just bought one of each.
Good. That's sane.
Well, it's so great to talk to you again.
Same here. Thank you, John. Appreciate it.